Okay, this is another one that I want to just kind of look at with you guys. This is more of an exercise in just understanding this stuff than it is, excuse me, than it is actually trying to, being part of the assignment. But Game of Thrones, at least while it was, especially in its early seasons, so you can see at the top, this is season 3, episode 7. Its first about 4 seasons, especially, are incredibly strong, and it's some of the best written stuff, best edited, all of that. And the dialogue, these scenes, everyone knows Game of Thrones. If you don't know anything about Game of Thrones, you probably know that it has big, giant battle scenes and dragons. But the best scenes are not those scenes. The best scenes are two people in a room talking. And that's what this scene is, and it's such a good scene. Again, I'll give you a little bit of context, but then I'm going to kind of let this play and I'm going to talk over it at least somewhat or pause it from time to time. Otherwise, I'll let it play here with me kind of talking through it. But the idea is that at this point, this boy king, King Joffrey, becomes king in the first season when his father dies. There's a lot of things going on. This kid really shouldn't be the king because he's not actually the real son of the previous king. It was a situation where the queen cheated on the king. Yada yada yada. If you know Game of Thrones, you know all this backstory. But if not, I'm going to give you the minimum you need. There's a big war that happens because of a bunch of other things that are going on, and this guy that's walking in his name is Tywin Lannister. You can actually see his name up there at the top, Tywin. And Joffrey, you can see his name up the top too. It's not spelled the normal way that we think of for like Jeffrey or even the Geoff version that is more commonly British spelling. But Tywin is Joffrey's grandfather through the queen, the mother. So uh, he is serving in a role that's called Hand of the King, which is basically sort of the steward, the person that kind of runs everything that's actually happening. And uh, he's someone who's very, very experienced and knows what he's doing. And he is the real power in the kingdom. Uh, this King Joffrey thinks he's the real power, but Tywin is the head of the richest family, and basically he is powerful in a way that the king just isn't, especially because the king is obviously so young, as you'll see here in a second. The king is trying to kind of do a little bit of a power play on his grandfather, but the grandfather basically isn't having it. But at the same time, he plays the game. So let's actually just hit play on this and talk through little portions of it.
Your Grace.
Grandfather?
You wanted to speak to me?
Yes. I'd like a report on the meetings of my small council.
All right, I want to stop it right here real quick. I'm going to have my volume coming in and out. But several things that I liked about this already. We start off with that distance, and we get this nice long shot early, the one just a few seconds ago, where it actually shows him down there. It shows both him and the king in the shot at the same time, and it does show that he has to look up to him. And then we just see that distance that's going to, of course, eventually be closed. Then we get these high angle and low angle shots that again are diminishing Tywin and empowering Joffrey the king, and that's the state of things to start this conversation. And we've got, of course, even Tywin the grandfather, even though he is the more powerful person in the room. He comes up and says, "Your Grace." He is, playing the game. He knows what he's supposed to say. So that's a lot of the stuff that we start off with. That's our beginning of this. So from there.
You're welcome to attend the meetings of your small council, Your Grace. Any or all of them.
I've been very busy. Many important matters require King's attention.
Of course.
You've been holding the council meetings in the Tower of the Hand instead of the small council chamber.
I have, yes.
May I ask why?
Well, the Tower of the Hand is where I work. To walk from there to here would take time. Time I could otherwise spend productively.
So if I wanted to attend a council meeting, I would now have to climb all the stairs in the Tower of the Hand?
several more things I just want to talk about with that. We have him closing the distance. We have him walking up the stairs. In a normal situation, a person, even one of the most trusted advisors, stepping up to the king like that would probably not be looked very kindly upon. But the guards do nothing. We also get this great shot. And I'm actually going to back it up for this just brief moment. But I love this shot with the two braziers of fire there. Obviously, you're looking between them, and it just kind of gets that whole idea of the you can almost just sense Tywin's anger is growing. That there's sort of a fire inside of him that he's frustrated with his grandson. Like his grandson just doesn't get this. Why doesn't he understand that he's the one that really knows what he's doing? But he's still restrained. So the fire is growing there, and we get this cool shot. It's not only, showing the fire, but shows that distance being closed.
We could arrange to have you carried.
Tell me about the Targaryen girl in the east.
And that's just a great spot right there. We get now the opposite. We now get the low angle shots are now looking up at Tywin, and that incredibly extreme high angle shot looking down on Joffrey, and we even see like sort of almost the nervous energy that the actor has. This is a character that's pretty well hated throughout this show, King Joffrey, because he is just the worst. Well, he's the worst for the first few seasons. Someone else comes along that's worse than him eventually. But he is pretty much just the worst character in the first few seasons. He is like just completely arrogant, and he's basically sort of a psychopath that doesn't really care about anyone else, and he just flaunts his power and likes to see other people get harmed. But even now, even as king, to his grandfather, he is still the little kid that has to look up to his grandfather, even as king, even as a king that doesn't care what anyone else thinks. And we get that especially with, of course, that extreme angle looking up. Let's finish the scene now.
And her dragons.
Where did you hear about this?
Is it true?
Apparently so.
Don't you think we ought to do something about it?
When I was hand of the king under your father's predecessor, the skulls of all the Targaryen dragons were kept in this room. And the skull of the last of them was right here. It was the size of an apple.
And the biggest was the size of a carriage.
Yes, and the creature to whom it belonged died 300 years ago. Curiosities on the far side of the world are no threat to us.
But how do we know these dragons are just curiosities and not the beasts that brought the whole world to heel?
Because we have been told as much by the many experts who serve the realm by counseling the king on matters about which he knows nothing.
But I haven't been counseled.
You are being counseled at this very moment.
I should be consulted about such things.
From now on, I will see to it that you are appropriately consulted on important matters.
Just some other things that are really great about the acting of this too. You just see Joffrey, he just comes off as this almost like little child, and of course he is, but he's the king. But you'll also notice that Tywin the whole time, even though he is very frustrated and impatient with this conversation, he is standing over Joffrey. He is standing there confidently, he's standing there calmly and firmly. And we see Joffrey, lots of hand gesticulations all over the place. And we see him, instead of looking down or looking up at his grandfather, he's almost looking down like this, like, like, what are we going to do about this? And, he's unwilling to kind of look up at his grandfather here. So we get this very interesting thing. The acting is really done well in this. The cinematography and the editing is all done really well here. And this is a scene that I think matches well with the who wins the scene one from Silence of the Lambs. Now this time I think we'll actually finish it. We only got like 20 seconds left here, so here's the end of the scene.
Whenever necessary. Your Grace.
And again, we end with him walking out very confidently. He's the one in charge. The grandson Joffrey looks even less sure of things, and we get the bookends, the beginning and the end. He walks in before he approaches the king. He says, "Your Grace," and at the end, before he excuses himself, which is something that no person, even the hand of the king, would be able to do. They would have to wait for the king to excuse them. He says, "Your Grace." So throughout the whole thing, just wonderfully acted. The guy playing Tywin is fantastic all around, but the kid that plays Joffrey obviously very well acted too. We get really good editing, really good cinematography, and it kind of shows that whole idea of who wins the scene again. So, and obviously in this case, it's I believe his name is Charles Dance. It's the guy that plays Tywin all the way. Uh, and that's, again, through everything from editing to the acting to the cinematography. We see all of that stuff reflected there. So that's my discussion on the Game of Thrones scene. And with that, please check out the assignment and work on that.